Welcome to Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group, your go-to podcast for all things real estate related. Each episode, we break down the latest market trends, share insider tips, and bring in local industry experts to offer valuable insights that empower your journey. Whether you're buying, selling, building, or investing, we're here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape with clarity and confidence. Let's get real about real estate. Hi, welcome to Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group. Today, I'm honored to have two of my agents here with us to talk about home staging. We have Laura Muschott and Bridget Archer. Welcome, ladies. I'm so excited to have you guys here.
Excited to be here.
So let's get into it. Home staging. Briefly tell me, what is home staging?
So home staging can mean a lot of different things, but overall, it's really preparing a home to be put on the market. By making it more visually appealing to potential buyers, making it more inviting, and just really setting it up for success on the market.
Okay.
So, and I mean, we could talk about the different, like what that can mean.
Yeah.
Because it could be anything from just cleaning and decluttering to doing a renovation. Honestly, it really depends on what the seller's goals are. So sometimes the seller wants to sell as quickly as possible. Sometimes they want to get the most money as possible. Most time people want a blend of that. But it really just depends on the needs of the homeowner. As to like what's going to be the appropriate.
So walk me through. I just want to do a follow-up question. If rooms need to be painted, sometimes, a children's room, pink, blue, we've seen orange, we've seen red.
Sure.
Is that part of the home staging? Do you guys recommend like neutral colors for them to paint over it if they can?
I would say typically when I come into a home and I'm prepping to stage it, my goal is how do I help the seller attract as many buyers as possible? And so a lot of the times it's just giving advice on what I think needs to be done. And it could be depersonalizing, taking down photos of the family so a buyer can come and envision themselves living there, helping them feel comfortable there. And yes, sometimes bright colors turn off some buyers, which is not what we want to do.
No, not at all. So walk us through the process from start to finish. You've walked into a house, you're doing a consultation, actually, a listing, presentation, and because you're both home stagers, you have extra value with your business as being, stagers. So just kind of walk us through, start to finish. What does it look like?
So the first question that I always ask is, who's hiring me? Is it the real estate agent or is it the homeowner? And it doesn't really differ in what services I provide, but it helps me just get an idea of what the project is going to look like.
Okay.
And I also want to get their expectation, meaning do they want a full house where I'm staging every room, or am I just doing a small tweak here and there to, again, attract more buyers? So usually I'll go in, I'll take some measurements, I'll get an idea of the project, I'll take some pictures, and then I'll put up a proposal, figure out if we need to rent furniture, if I need to just bring in a few pieces here and there to maybe make the mantle look a little bit nicer, and some throw pillows to add some more character. Really kind of just a nicely made bed and, some pillows and maybe a throw can really change a room.
Do you, Laura, when you go in, do you recommend moving their existing furniture? I mean, after it's decluttered, do you look at a room and be like, I think we can make the room look larger by moving some furniture around?
Yeah, that can be a big part of it. I mean, some homeowners really have it set up the best way possible. They've been living there for however long and they've really figured it out and not much needs to be done. But, when you live in a home, it's very personal, like you said, and so sometimes the way something is set up really works for their family. But like Bridget said, we want to be appealing to the most buyers as possible. So we need to think like, what are most people going to be able to use this space for? So to answer your question, moving furniture, sometimes removing furniture because something is too cluttered, makes the space seem small, or adding furniture, because we need to show how a space isn't just like dead space
Right.
or wasted space, but it's really functional and it's going to be a useful part of their investment. So that's all part of it. And then also, I think the size of furniture is really important too. So a lot of times people have really big furniture because they have a big family, and that's what is really practical for them. But it makes the room feel more crowded than a typical piece of furniture would make it feel. Or a dining room, for example. Like I see a lot of times people, their dining room tables are either awkwardly small for the space or just way too big.
Too big.
And so sometimes just swapping out a piece of furniture for something that's more appropriately sized for the room can make a huge difference.
So tell me, I know here, for instance, a seller's getting ready to move. And maybe a couple of the bedrooms or one of the living areas is empty. Would you recommend bringing in furniture, or would you recommend doing virtually staging the space? Or is it really dependent on the client?
So I think it depends on the where the house is, meaning the neighborhood. Like, you almost want to figure out who, or try to envision what person is going to buy it. I always recommend doing the primary bedroom, because you can see, typically someone's going to sleep at the house.
Right.
What they're going to use the other bedrooms for, you don't really know. It could be an office, it could be a playroom, it could be a kid's room, it could be a guest room. So a lot of people don't see the value in staging those, because it could be anything.
Even virtually staging, you think?
So virtually staging, yes. I mean, you could do that if you choose, but again, everyone's going to use it for something different, so it might not be necessary.
So primary bedroom, family room, living room, if they have both, and kitchen, would you say, is good to stage?
Yeah, I think the entranceway is really important as well.
Good point.
I've heard from a couple different sources that you have like 10 seconds to create that first impression, and for a buyer to decide if they like the home or not, and then maybe 30 seconds for them to decide if they even want to keep looking at the house.
Yes.
And so that entryway, buyers are very emotional, and they buy with their emotions.
Right.
So that first impression when you walk in, I think, is huge, and it really sets the stage.
Absolutely.
As you're walking through the rest of the home. A lot of times people's entryways are kind of blah, or they're very overcrowded because we drop our stuff there, or for whatever reason. So I think that would be almost the number one thing I think of when I come in, besides functionality and of other rooms.
Yeah.
But
That's a good point. I just made a note on here about the foyer. You never think of it.
Yeah.
So look at that.
Yes.
26 years in the business.
There you go.
Always learn something new every day. So thank you for that. What are the benefits? We talked about, what are the benefits of a seller wanting to stage their home?
So I think it just helps people feel more comfortable in the house. Buyers want to be able to picture themselves living there. And so if they can, one, envision themselves living there with the placement of the furniture and seeing how useful the space could be. But then also just to feel comfortable and like, oh, this is a nice house that, I can see myself living in.
Okay. Do you think sellers get more money when a home is staged?
I do, and staged doesn't have to mean like fully staged with a ton of furniture. It can even mean, if your home is empty, repainting all of the rooms to be a more neutral color, and having everything clean, and maybe doing some touch-ups. That's not what we think of traditionally as staging, but that in and of itself can completely change the impression. It changes the pictures,
It does.
which most people are looking at pictures before they view the home, and that's what's making them decide whether they're even interested in going in or not. So that's all part of it. I would say one of the number one things I do with clients is helping them pick out paint colors, because that's overwhelming to people, but it makes a really big difference. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think that often my clients think that people are going to be able to have vision for the space, and they think that, well, everyone watches HGTV now. We're all like kind of trained to come in and put on our, creative caps
24 hours.
and like really problem solve,
Sure.
and they're going to be able to look past this paint color, and of course you could paint a house and all, but I would say that most buyers cannot visualize, and it's overwhelming when you're looking for a house. They're thinking about all these things, and when they come in, they just really want it to feel good. They don't want to have to spend a ton of time there, you know. And even as a stager, like we'll go in, and sometimes we're sitting there for a while, like, what would we use this space for? And it takes, even though as professionals we're used to it, it takes us a while to do that. You don't want to risk putting that on a potential buyer. You really want to set it up for them. So.
And paint colors go a long way, right? You see a house freshly painted, or even the main living areas, it takes on a whole new look. And obviously using neutral colors is always the best. And I agree, it is hard for people to visualize, and it is hard for people to pick paint colors.
Yes.
If I have to pick a paint color, give me two choices, A or B. After when C and D get involved, I can't do it. So it is overwhelming. For most. What are some of the what are the most common mistakes homeowners make when preparing their home to put it on the market?
At least for a lot of the times, people, it's a personal experience, and so kind of what you were saying, they don't realize that maybe their style isn't everybody's style, and so they think it's completely fine, and they don't think to maybe take down their decorations or maybe neutralize their design choices a little bit. They don't see a problem with their house because it's their home and they love it.
And that's that's where they live. It's still their home. Right.
So that, at least for me, is always a delicate conversation to have. You have to tell somebody that maybe their design choices weren't appealing to other people.
Buyers.
So I think they have that personal connection. So you need to kind of hold their hand a little bit and walk them back, and then you know what, this is going to help you by taking down some of your things.
Right. Especially pictures. I know you both touched on personal belongings and pictures. And that's hard when you have to have the conversation because they're taking down pictures of their family. And I know I'm not a home stager. I call you guys when I need help. But when I was in the field, right, I was like, you got to move, so you got to start packing. So you might as well start, with the decluttering and, and getting the pictures down. It is a tough conversation. Give me some staging tips on maximizing appeal, but I want to turn that, because we always talk about the interior of the house. I know I'm going to throw you guys for a curveball, but you guys are professionals. You're going to answer this. How about curb appeal, even for staging? We've got to talk about that, right? Someone drives by and the lawn's not mowed. They're like, it can affect it.
Definitely.
So do you guys talk to your clients about the curb appeal, and what do those conversations look like?
Oh,
So
I have my landscaper on speed dial.
Well, it's the first picture typically that buyers see when they're looking online.
Yeah, we have to post the for our MLS rules. It has to be the exterior of the home.
Yes, and kind of piggybacking off of the foyer comment, having a nice front porch, because that's where buyers are going to walk up and they're waiting for their agent to unlock the door. That's where they're going to wait. So having some flowers there, a wreath, a nice welcome mat, even pieces like that are helpful. And then, making sure the lawn nice, make sure the leaves are raked up, and so it looks nice and clean and well maintained.
I have two more questions for both of you. Holiday decorations. Someone puts their house on the market and we're around, Christmas time. Do we put the tree up? Is the tree up? Do we ask them to take it down? They have children, so it's kind of hard. What are your feelings on that?
I say put the tree up. I mean, so here's the thing. So I guess there's no right or wrong. If a home is small, I feel like a lot of times the tree is like in the way. It takes up space and it's not helpful. But if you have a really nice place for it and you have tasteful decor and not like Santa Claus exploding everywhere, or I think that it can be very cozy and inviting.
Yes.
So
it can invoke that personal touch that buyers want when they walk into the house. They can picture their
Right.
Christmas morning.
Right.
But I
Right.
do think that there's a lot of times where a home, even my home personally, like we have to move furniture like
Sure.
where we want our tree.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it in my house because of my personal living space. So I guess it depends.
Yes.
But
So I'm going to say the opposite, only because my experience is sometimes houses sit on the market for a little bit longer. You know, if it's a seller's market, they'll go quickly. But let's say it doesn't, and you have to put it back on the market, and now it's March, and the photos have a Christmas
Right.
tree in it.
oh, for the pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for that
I didn't
reason,
think about for the pictures.
yeah.
Yes, for the
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, for
it's
that
better
reason,
to not
yeah,
have a
I
tree
like
in
to
the
avoid
pictures.
it.
You know, and even we talk about, you know, and it's houses usually are not on the market
Right,
that long.
yes.
But you know, in general, they used to be. But even if you take a picture and we have 3 feet of snow,
Sure.
right, in the exterior picture, and I'm always sending emails, hey guys, it's springtime, we got to change those exterior photos.
It's
and
half the year here, though.
I know. I know. I
you
think
could say the opposite too. If
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
spring or summer and
Yeah, and for the general public, it is May 21st, and I got to tell you, it's freezing. So to
Yeah.
Laura's point, I think we're still in winter. Hopefully,
Yeah.
it's going to turn next week, but
Hopefully,
you know,
fingers
we
crossed.
shall see. Another question I thought of when we were talking about staging the dining room table for pictures. Yes, no. If there is a dining room, fully set, as if you're having company over.
I think it depends on the house, and again, if it's a very formal dining room with the grand chandelier, I think putting placemats down with plates and dining room, or
Utensils.
utensils, thank you, could be very nice. But if it's in the middle of the kitchen, and maybe just be clutter, if it's a small table.
Right. So
So
more
it
like a
depends.
great room kitchen.
Sure.
You know, where your kitchen table will go, maybe not even a dining room. So does that hold true to even just a kitchen table and there is no dining room? Would you set that table or do a centerpiece? Something
I like the
both through?
centerpiece
Mhm.
idea. I feel like what I typically like, and especially dining rooms are sometimes a little more plain. So having a nice centerpiece,
Sure.
appropriately sized, but with
Yes.
big flowers
Mhm.
and stuff.
Yes, it look really nice.
Is there anything else that we missed that the public would want to know about home staging? Is there anything that we didn't touch on, or any last minute advice that you ladies have?
I would say one of the most important things to me is that when your buyers come in, you want to make them feel like the home has been cared for
Mhm.
and is clean.
Mm-hmm.
Cleaning goes a really long way, and it's, I think, essential. Smells is important. Like
Mhm.
all this stuff is
Yes.
all wrapped into it. So a clean home just feels good and is visually appealing, obviously, too. And lighting, I think, is essential. As much natural light as possible. Make sure your blinds are open. Make sure
Right,
your
yeah.
curtains are open. If you don't have natural light, consider adding lighting in. Like sometimes there's bedrooms that, especially in the wintertime here, I
Right,
mean, we
yeah.
have such,
Mhm.
a lot of times people are going after work and it's completely dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that your rooms are well lit is a
Yeah,
good,
it's a good
Yeah.
point.
good tip.
Good point. And when you talk about dark, so I'm going to throw another question in there. Not really about home staging, but it could be. In the winter, right? It could start here at 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys like to show houses at night in the winter?
I don't. Sometimes it's necessary, but
Yeah, I would prefer it
Mhm.
for the seller or the buyer.
Sure. It's hard to see the
But
outside.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
can't get around it.
Right,
People's
right.
schedules
Yeah.
and but if I do show a house at night, sometimes depending on feedback, I like them to come back
sure.
in the daylight.
Bring a flashlight.
First impressions are big, so
Yeah.
Right.
it's ideal to show.
Yeah.
And I've had clients before block out nighttime
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
because they don't want they want people seeing it. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, they can't
Yeah.
come during the day on the week, come on the weekend. And,
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
a day off. So, I mean, that's something to talk about with your clients. But
Mm-hmm.
Another question.
Oh.
Do you stage if there's animals? Do you have like a little, area where the dog's toys would be or the cat toys would be? Everyone, right? Mostly everyone loves dogs and cats and animals and You know, so is that something you look at if they have maybe 2 dogs or a couple cats or something? Do you like stage a little, or do you just hide all the toys?
I usually put it away, and I'll tell you why. Because my husband is not an animal lover.
Good point.
So when we were shopping for our own house, he would walk in and he would, see the dog toys or the cat food, and he would be turned off by it.
Oh, good point.
So
okay,
so you don't want to lose, even if it's just one buyer who's going to come in with the best offer, you don't want to lose anybody. And so I usually, from my personal experience with my husband, I usually
that's a good
tuck it
point.
all away.
Experience is good.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that, during the showcase of homes.
Sure.
Some of the houses actually have a room with, the
for
dog
sure.
shower, the dog bath, and, the dog bed pulls in and out, and it just looks
It's very cute.
cool.
That, something like that, a custom feature, I think is a little different than if you're like, dog's water dish is in the entryway, or
like toys or something. Like
but
little
I do think that if you have a really cool custom feature like that, then maybe that home is going to more appeal to someone with a dog. Because someone without a dog or an animal, what are they going to do with that custom dog bath in their mudroom?
Yeah.
I guess spray your kids down in there. I guess I could do that, but
well, you could, depending on how big they are, right?
Yeah, right. Mine
They're
really
outside
scary,
playing. Yeah, get in there and take a shower.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Do any of you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, but this was great. I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff, and hopefully people find it helpful.
Yeah, wonderful.
I would say, I think that staging and like talking to a professional about staging is really for anyone. It's a lot of times people think it means only like bringing in furniture and all of that, but there's just so many things you can do with what you currently have to improve the curb appeal, like you're saying, or the interior. So I think every person putting their home on the market to some extent needs to think about staging their home.
Yeah, staging.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, good. Thank you, ladies. I know you guys are busy out in the field, so thank you for taking some time to come in, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group, and we're going to have the contact information for Bridget and Laura in the comments. Certainly, feel free to reach out at Sterling Real Estate Group at info@sterling518.com. Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions about real estate or topics you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at info@sterling518.com.